One of them that really stuck out to me was of a little girl who climbed up a tree to get a better view of the forest, but she never ended up coming back down, and there was no trace of her, like completely vanished. Her grandma and her mom never said that she came down, so she just climbed up, never came down, and they couldn't see her, they couldn't find her.
Yeah, that's a really horrible story, but in my mind, just immediately went to hold on tight, Spidermonkey.
Oh no.
It did though, because I was like, what if she just jumped to another tree?
Oh, and she was jumping from tree to tree, and that doesn't scare you the hell out of you.
No, but Edward Cullen came and said, hold on tight, Spidermonkey.
Jesus. Let's get into it.
Ooh, okay, so if you could be any age for a week, what age would you be?
If I could be any age, I feel like I have to pick an age that I've already been because I've experienced those ages before.
Really?
Yeah.
I want to be like 40.
You don't know what it's like to be 40.
I know, but I would like to try.
Okay.
Because then I could be 40 for a week.
Oh.
I feel like when you're 40, it's the new 30 from what I've heard, and you just don't give a fuck.
That's true.
That's what, I've heard.
I think...
From Kourtney Kardashian.
I think if I were to choose an age, I would probably be 10 or 11 again. Young. Because I had so much fun as a kid. I think it would be really fun. And I'm getting so deep, but what I know, all the stuff that I know now as a 10-year-old.
No,
I think that would hurt my brain a little bit, but.
Okay, maybe I would want to be young too.
Yeah, because then I would spend more time enjoying the fact that I was outside getting dirty and hanging out until the streetlights come on.
Would you though? Or would you know too much that you wouldn't?
I think I would like to live a week as a 10-year-old just so I can experience the kind of carefreeness. I don't have to pay a mortgage if I'm 10.
And then you'd have to, maybe when you're 40 you're mortgage free.
Oh God. Yeah, I hope so. And welcome to our podcast. This is our first episode and we are really excited but also a little nervous. So we thought that we would do some icebreakers and I feel like the ice has been broken a little bit.
Yeah, us and the mic, ice broken.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to talk about a little bit about the name of the podcast. What is it called?
Wouldn't You Like to Know?
The Wouldn't You Like to Know podcast. And why is it called that? What was the reasoning for the name? What did we choose that?
I liked it because back when me and Brandon moved into this place in 2020, I thought it would be funny to have our Wi-Fi name be a meme. So our Wi-Fi name was Wouldn't You Like to Know? And the password was Weatherboy.
Like the Vine.
Yeah, because we're old.
And we grew up in the Vine days.
Yeah, I made vines.
Oh God, me too.
Yeah.
I think if I could look back at the vines that I made, I would be upset and I would probably shed a tear.
There's one that I remember that I wanted to have stiletto nails,
Oh yeah.
And I didn't have fake nails and I didn't have long nails, so I just sharpened my short nails to a point.
That's
terrible. I painted them. And then I made a vine about them and they were horrifying.
Did you say anything in the video?
No. I think I did a close-up on my hands, then a faraway selfie clip with me pursing my lips, and then I did a close-up on my eye makeup that was winged eyeshadow and winged eyeliner with blue eyeshadow.
Okay, I didn't actually know that about you.
Yeah, I was wearing a Hollister cardigan that was thick blue and white stripes,
Nice.
Sailor.
Yeah, I think the name fits for us, Kat and I's relationship, because I think we talk a lot in old memes and vines. It's just kind of our humor. And
Degen language.
Yeah, exactly. Degenerate. The Wouldn't You Like to Know Weatherboy was one of our favorite memes. And I think it was just, it kind of works for our podcast because I know that we just love yapping and love talking. And I thought that, or I guess we thought that it would be a perfect title to kind of encapsulate the things that we talk about, because wouldn't you like to know? Wouldn't you want to know about what we're talking about? I would.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You should.
Yeah. You should want to know as well.
Yeah. If you don't,
So in talking with Kat, I think our idea for this podcast is to kind of talk about different things that excite us and interest us. And that kind of is specifically, I think, targeted towards psychology, psychological things, spooky things, a little bit more lifestyle chat. And yeah, I think it's just kind of, this podcast will encapsulate a lot of the stuff that we're interested in, usually talk about when we're not recording. So I'm super excited. And I think for this first episode, we're going to go into some stuff that we are very interested in talking about, which is pretty morbid. But
so trigger warning.
Yeah.
For suicide.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So if that's not something you vibe with, we're going to be talking about that. So.
And we will be talking about other stuff that doesn't have a trigger warning in future episodes, so don't worry. Yeah. It'll be okay. But for this one, we thought we might start it out with a bang because it's just stuff that we end up talking about anyways. So, yeah, Kat, take it away.
Okay. So I guess, yeah, me and Brandon went to San Francisco. How many years ago? Jeez.
A couple years.
4 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years ago. We went to San Francisco. And I was telling a friend that we were going to visit there. She's like, oh, are you going to go to the Golden Gate Bridge? Then I was like, oh, yeah, of course. And she's like, did you know that the Golden Gate Bridge is a bridge with the most suicides ever? And I was like, no, that's terrifying. And now I will be thinking about that while I'm walking on it. Awesome.
Did you guys walk all the way across the bridge? Nice. Was it foggy?
Oh, yeah. Like, we couldn't see a thing.
Oh, that's like classic San Francisco, I feel like.
Yeah. It was really, I mean, it kind of sucked because when we were hiking up, because we first were on the other side and then we hiked up the side of this, like, hill. Yeah. And then got to, like, a viewpoint. And it was really cool because it was, like, actually, like an old army base up there. So, like, it was kind of like the ruins. Cool. So, like, you could go into, like, rooms and, like, it was kind of looked like some prison cells in some parts. It was really interesting. And cannons and stuff were there. But anyways, while you're there, you can, like, see the whole Golden Gate Bridge. But while we were there, for, like, most of it, couldn't see a thing. It was just clouds.
Spooky.
And that was it.
Yeah.
And then we got to, like, glimpse the Golden Gate Bridge for a little bit. And then we walked down, then we walked across. Nice. Yeah, so it is kind of creepy because through doing this, like, research on it more, and the suicides and stuff, and, like, the history, one of the suicides I did research on, she parked her car right where we were, like, in the same parking lot. Oh, wow. And so it was, like, talking about the Vistas viewpoint.
That's what it's called?
The viewpoint on the other side of the road, not the one we went to. Okay. I don't know what the one we went to, but the Vistas viewpoint is, like, a parking lot, and then you can also see from, like, the left side of the bridge, if you're on the north side, is where she parked. Wow. And it was just, like, creepy because I could picture it. And, like, picture me.
The empty car. And...
yeah, like, what she saw before.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just really creepy. But anyways, okay, so today I will be talking about the world famous Golden Gate Bridge, famous for being the tallest and longest bridge built at the time and considered a sign of power and progress for the United States when it was first built, but also known famously for being the bridge with the most suicides, as I said. So it was designed by Joseph Strauss and opened in 1937. The Golden Gate Bridge was a whopping 1.7 miles long, and it's 6 lanes wide.
Damn, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so, like, walking across it takes a minute.
Because I'm imagining, I don't really have experiences with large bridges, aside from the, what is it called? The one near Stanley Park.
Oh, Lionsgate?
The Lionsgate Bridge.
Yeah.
And I think that's 2 or 3 lanes.
That's a smaller one.
It's a smaller bridge. Yeah. In Vancouver, where we're from. But I don't have experiences, I guess, aside from when we walked across the Brooklyn Bridge, but we were on top of it. Which is crazy to think about.
Which is creepy to think. Yeah. We were on top of it.
On top of the lanes.
I don't know how many lanes that is. Probably about 6, but it's not as long, I don't think.
Gotcha.
Because you can actually see to the other side easily, whereas, like, this bridge, it's pretty hard to see to the other side.
Wow.
That's how long it is. Yeah. And that's what, like, the bridge is, and the actual, like, lead up on both sides, because it, obviously, like, most bridges and, like, highways and stuff, has, like, kind of like a overpass roundabout thing is even longer. Yes. So, like, you end up having to walk way longer. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so it was originally disputed by locals for ruining the beautiful bay view, but the Golden Gate Bridge quickly became famous, particularly for the orange and red coloring. And it was fun to find out that this orange coloring was accidentally landed upon because the primer for all the steel was orange.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So everybody in San Francisco hated the idea of having this big, ugly bridge put across the Bay Area. And a lot of people didn't think they could do it because of how windy it is there. Then once it was built, they were deciding what to paint it. But all this like primer was still on it. But I guess all the locals had kind of got used to it. And were like, okay, wait, actually, that looks really good with the bay and like the whole strait. Yeah. So we actually want to keep that.
It's so iconic. That color is so like when I hear the word San Francisco, the color of the bridge pops up, and that's so crazy that it wasn't actually meant. Do you know what color it was supposed to be?
Black and yellow.
Oh,
like,
gross.
Because it was supposed to be like kind of like an army war sign of their power over that strait. I guess.
Interesting.
Yeah, so like the army wanted to have
Imagine if it was just black and yellow. Yeah. And like and all the movies.
Be, like, really grossly like striped, like mostly black, and then the big beams that you see, like the two towers, were gonna be black and yellow. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. It's just I was looking at like the sketches of what it was supposed to be, and I was like, yucks. But anyways, so yeah, it ended up being the orange color, and that's what adds to how famous it is. Yeah. The excitement didn't last long. Less than 3 months after the opening, the Golden Gate Bridge had its first confirmed suicide.
Oh, wow.
Less than 3 months, this bridge was standing.
Wow.
And it was Harold B. Wobbler, a World War I veteran and a bargeman at the time. He took the bus to the bridge on August 8th, 1937. While walking across the bridge, he ran into an old college professor. They continued their walk across the bridge, and Wobbler said, "What a great day for what I'm about to do. You'll see," before later removing his coat and his vest, stepping towards the railing, and proclaiming to the professor, "This is where I get off. I'm going to jump." Despite the professor's attempt to grab Wobbler, he jumped over the mere 4-foot railing and fell to 75 feet in 4 seconds to his death. Wow. So that's another fun fact about this bridge, is that it was originally supposed to have 5.5-foot railings, which are pretty like common, I guess at the time. But the architect thought he wanted to take more of like an Art Deco approach to it, and he wanted them to be lower. So the 4 feet railings, obviously that's quite low, quite easy to just kind of prop yourself over. Yeah. I believe is one of the reasons that this
is the reason. Bridge. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's so easy, and he was right next to this man.
What an insane
couldn't grab him.
Choice. Like stylistic choice. I wonder if it was higher, if that would have obviously would change so much of the
even just like 1.5 feet, who knows?
Statistics of wow.
So since opening the Golden Gate Bridge, it has seen approximately 30 suicides per year, with a total of almost 1,800 suicides since 1937. So to put that into comparison, a lot of bridges who have been around since then see maybe like total, they've maybe had like 100 to 200 versus 1,800. Jeez. Quite drastic change. Yeah. With survivors often citing that they chose the bridge because of how easy it was to jump off of, the statistics on it working due to the height of it, but also due to the water temperature and the rapids and like the wind. Wow. Because if you don't die on impact, you'll die quite quickly after, based on
how cold the water is.
Hypothermia. Jeez. And also often saying how it is a romantic place to die. So one survivor in particular being Kevin Hines, who tried to commit suicide by jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge in 2000. I'm going to talk a little bit about him. Kevin came into this world surrounded by depression. Both his parents had manic depression disorder, and they used drugs and alcohol to cope. This resulted in him being taken away from them and adopted by Patrick and Deborah Hines. He grew up and had a wonderful childhood until at the age of 17 or 18, his biological predisposition to mental health disorders started to show face. Starting with audio and visual hallucinations, paranoid delusions, and manic depressive episodes, he was unable to understand what was happening or how to cope, and he couldn't put a voice to his pain or how he was feeling. And as he became someone unrecognizable by his friends, they started distancing themselves out of confusion and just out of feeling defeated. They just didn't know what to do to help.
Yeah.
So after a year and a half, he was 19. His suicidal ideation had started and the planning had started. So on a date in 2000, I did forget what date it is.
Unspecific.
On an unspecific date, he got ready to leave and he was on the way to the Golden Gate Bridge when his dad, Patrick, stopped him and asked, "What's wrong, Kevin?" And Kevin responded, "Nothing, Dad. I just wanted to tell you that I love you." Kevin said this thinking that it would be the last time he ever spoke to his dad. He then bussed to the Golden Gate Bridge, which is actually the exact same way that Harold B. Wobbler also got to the bridge.
Bust.
Bus.
You don't have to park your car. You don't have to...
It's horrible. Then he got off at the Golden Gate Bridge and he walked across the bridge for 40 minutes, sobbing the whole time.
Yeah.
Walking past pedestrians and bikers, and even at the time he walked past 2 police officers that are there specifically to look out for suicide attempts. Nobody asked him a thing. Nobody stopped him. Even as he's leaning against the railing, sobbing and watching his tears fall into the water. Nobody asked him. And at that time, he just assumed it was because nobody cared. And that was far from the truth. So he decided to jump, but he instantly regretted it. He said the millisecond that his feet and his hands left the railing, he just knew it was the worst decision he'd ever made. However, the story doesn't end like so many others do. And driving by was a woman who saw Kevin, and as he jumped, she immediately called her close friend at the Coast Guard.
Wow.
And because of this, they were able to get to him in just under 3 minutes.
That is so quick.
So quick, if you think about it.
So quick. And usually it takes a long time, I feel like, for Coast Guards to find people to, it takes this hot second.
Yeah, but there was also another reason they were able to find him. Even though when he landed, his back shattered on impact in multiple places, there was a sea lion that appeared and started circling him and helping him continue to bob.
You're kidding.
In the water. Yeah. At first he thought it was a shark, and he thought, of course.
Of course.
Like,
what a way to go.
By a shark attack after I just jumped off a bridge. But then he noticed that it wasn't hurting him, and it was actually helping him continue to bob up in the water.
Wow.
And people looking down
could
fully see what it was doing and be like, no, it was fully helping you.
Wow.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. So now Kevin is a suicide prevention speaker and filmmaker, and he travels America, helping not only people who struggle with suicide, but also those who love them. He describes suicide, in his case specifically, not as a decision, but as a compulsion that needs to be stopped. Speaking about the day he got on the bridge, he just needed somebody or something to be put in front of him as a barrier so that he could fight that compulsion too. Mm-hmm. So in 2006, Patrick Hines, Kevin's father, Dave Hull, father of suicide that was successfully committed, and Paul Mueller, who had a family member that was extended that also passed away by suicide off the Golden Gate Bridge, they founded Bridge Rail Foundation, a nonprofit organization with the mission to build a higher rail on the Golden Gate Bridge and install a net. And in 2008, just 2 years later, which is crazy, the plans for the net were approved. However, without funding or any plans for the funding. So it wasn't until 2018 that the $224 million project to build a net got started. And it just got completed January 1st, 2024. And it spans 95% of the bridge. The net is made out of steel and wire. It is 20 feet below the walkway, and it goes 20 feet out. This design was made to hurt. So it claims that it will break and bruise bones, and it is also made to obstruct the view of any potential jumper in order to make them reconsider. Right. So that's kind of how they see it in twofold helping. Not only will it deter them because they're like, oh, it's going to really hurt if I jump, because of course they could just climb to the edge and then, continue their path.
Yeah.
But also because it's hopes of taking away that romantic
view,
but also make what you're doing seem really real.
Yeah.
Because that's what most people say, is that as soon as they jumped, they regretted it.
Oh, yeah.
So if you can somehow put that like barrier in.
Just like what that guy needed, he needed that intervention. He needed someone to just, stop that compulsion. So it's almost like this net is kind of, put in place to remind people that
of what they're doing.
Exactly.
And how much it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
And there was actually another guy, while I was doing my research, that I found out about. He didn't end up jumping.
Yeah.
But that's what stopped him, was that he was just like, this is going to not only hurt me, but it's going to hurt everyone in my life.
Yeah.
And he was reminded by that, because I think there was a patrol officer that helped talk him down.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'll talk about them as well. So the net was not always supported by the locals. Obviously, the Golden Gate Bridge is seen as a beautiful
landmark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to put a bridge to ruin the view of the bay. So a lot of the people didn't want to put a net on that
to obstruct that view.
Yeah. Beautiful bridge. And they argued, a lot of their argue was that if a person wants to die, then they'll find a way. End of story. Mm-hmm. This is this theory of if a person wants to die, then they'll do it, is strongly contradicted by the 1978 Seedon study that showed 90% of people who were stopped from jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge later did not die from suicide. So they checked in years later, and they'd either passed away from like natural circumstances or they were still alive.
So they were halted in that thought.
Mm-hmm. And it's not to say that they didn't still struggle.
Of course.
But it's just that peak. That you need somebody to put something in front of you to slow you down so that you can get the help you need, which is what it really is. And then this was also further proven inaccurate by a Harvard School of Public Health article that stated that 9 out of 10 people who attempt suicide, just in general, will not go on to die by suicide at a later date.
Wow.
Which is kind of crazy, because I kind of feel like I assume, if somebody tries once, they're going to try again, and they're going to succeed.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if this is, in this specific study, they did try again, but they continued to not succeed.
Right.
Or if they did it once and then,
I wonder if, if you try jumping off the bridge and you're somehow halted by, a passerby or cops or whatever, if, and you go home and, you're stopped from that feeling, if going back to the bridge and trying again is something that people do, because I think it is such a big act to be outside in front of so many people. So I think that probably makes sense why there's so many people who continue living and I think that's great. But it is interesting to think about.
Yeah. So since the net was installed, the Golden Gate Bridge has seen a significant decrease in suicides, with only 14 suicides in 2023 before the net was even completed.
Wow.
So that's half.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
So this is not the only preventative technique that has been put in place at the Golden Gate Bridge. There are emergency buttons put along the walkways to call for help. There are signs stating that the walkway is under video surveillance.
Yeah.
And then there's also a bridge security department, which monitors the bridge through patrols. So that was actually originally instated for terrorism protection after 9/11.
Okay, gotcha.
Which is actually really interesting to me. But the bridge patrol's main priority is now suicide prevention.
Wow.
So it's not about terrorism.
Are they patrolling on foot? Are they patrolling on vehicle, like going back and forth?
I believe that from what I saw, there's like people on motorcycles that go across.
Gotcha, that makes sense.
And there's also people who walk across and I think are like on standby, but I do think they also watch the cameras.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But I do think they're on foot a lot of the time, because actually when I was reading the main article that got me like the bulk of like the gist of the whole, I guess, story, she was walking across, the reporter, she was walking across and she had her notebook out, and I guess she was taking some notes on something because she saw one of the signs for the help, and so she was taking notes in her notebook, but as she's doing that, she's looking over the railing and kind of leaning against the railing, and she actually had somebody come up and start talking to her, And it seemed very...
Like they were trying to help her because they thought, maybe she was...
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And it really... That was just kind of crazy that she's writing a story on the suicides.
Yeah.
And then she gets stopped because somebody thought she was writing a suicide note.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder...
That's what they're looking out for. Actually, they're looking out for people writing suicide notes a lot of the time. Like people who are even in their cars.
Gotcha.
On either side writing suicide notes, or like people who are like kind of standing there writing suicide notes. Yeah.
I wonder if there are a lot of locals to San Fran that kind of make it their duty to kind of walk the bridge and to watch out for people who are, looking a little bit suspicious. I wonder if...
Yeah.
I feel like there has to be kind of...
Yeah, or even if it's just like not even that they patrol it, but every time they do go across, they're always looking.
They're watching. Yeah.
Well, I mean, because that woman who called because of Kevin Hines jumping, like she was on it and she immediately knew to call the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
And to think that the Coast Guard got to him in under 3 minutes, so how quick had her phone call had to be?
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking a phone call to make and get to the right people would take 3 minutes.
So she must have known someone.
She was immediate. Apparently she had a car phone.
Wow.
Yeah, which is just like an interesting way to picture it. Because like car phones. But yeah, so these bridge patrols, main priority is suicide prevention, and all the bridge patrol officers are actually required to undergo mental health training and de-escalation.
Good.
And crisis intervention.
That's so
they're
important.
Specifically trained. And it said something like almost like 80 hours or something that they had to do. So, like, proper trained.
That's good. You need the right person to say the right things in those situations. It's so important. If you say the wrong thing, you don't want to upset anyone. You don't want to offend anyone. It's so important that they have the right people with the right training.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we even talk about it with the police, that there's, like, mental health calls all the time. And I feel like specifically, in the small town that we live in, I feel like a lot of them are mental health calls.
Yeah.
I feel like they need to have people on site or being able to go to with them that have this training, or even need to have that training, because like it's just, how are you supposed to know always?
Yeah, it's like
what to say. Hostage
situations. People who are able to talk down the perpetrator holding these people hostage. Like, you need to be able to read the conversation, read their body language, understand exactly what to say to kind of de-escalate the situation. So I think it's so similar with talking these people off the ledge, literally, right? Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess it just like got me thinking about, bridges with nets, and should all bridges kind of have nets?
Yeah.
Is that intervening too much? Because like there is something to be said, like jumping or falling is technically what it's like described as when they're I guess doing the statistics for it.
Gotcha.
On how suicide's committed. It's actually like firearms, poison, and poisoning, and then I think, what's the other one? I forgot. Firearms, and suffocation.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so those are the main ones. And suicides committed by falling in 2020 was only 2% of the suicides.
What's the difference between jumping and falling, or are they classified together?
The same thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I see.
But that doesn't even just include bridges.
No,
like includes
cliffs, buildings, all that kind of stuff.
I guess hotels. Actually, other national monuments also started getting nets. Apparently, the Eiffel Tower has a net.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That didn't even pass my mind for something that someone would do. I mean, it makes sense. It's a very grandiose place,
Very romantic.
It's a very romantic, it's a moment. So that makes sense. Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think adding nets to bridges, coming from a place of compassion and not a place of, oh my God, it's going to look really ugly.
Yeah.
I think coming from a place of that, I think it's so important. I think it would save so many people and kind of help them reevaluate the decisions that they made and the way that they want to go about it. And it kind of creates a sense of that people are looking out for others.
And I think that's what it does, because it's reminding the person that somebody out there who built this bridge put in that thing.
That net.
or the higher railing.
Yes.
Or that button.
Yeah.
On like that emergency button. Like they did that. They intervened then because they were thinking about all the people who are like that person.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily that it's going to catch them. You know, it's also going to stop them. Also, it does catch them, and they do recoveries and stuff.
Yeah.
So they have they're fully trained on
how to get the people off the nets.
Yeah.
Back on the bridge.
But that's the thing, is that there's too many bridges.
There's so many bridges.
To have not only these nets, but
the team to be able to save them.
That are trained properly.
That's yeah.
Think about, the logistics of rescuing a person from a 20-foot net, or 20-foot net, 20 feet down.
Yeah.
How are you done? You need a small crane.
Yeah.
Like, how are you supposed to do that without risking the lives of the people who are saving them?
And a lot of bridges, at least where we're from, the walkways are really small. They're, it's thin. It's for maybe like two people beside each other walking, or like a bike. It's not a large walkway that it probably is in San Francisco.
Yeah.
It's not, you're not there to walk across the bridge and enjoy the nature. It's more of just getting from point A to point B.
And they're rarely walked.
So, exactly. So where is the space to be able to assist someone and save someone? I'm not sure how you would be saved from one of those nets. I'm assuming like a crane or some sort of crew
the fire
member.
Department is like the people who are trained, I think, in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Specifically, but still like...
Yeah. Like a long line, like rappelling down, picking them up and bringing them back up. But
yeah.
I think on every bridge, it's worth having the conversation about it. Does every bridge need a net, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's such an interesting conversation.
Yeah. I think that it should just be put into a basic, I guess, standard for how to build these bridges.
Totally.
That there needs to be not nets necessarily, but some sort of prevention and like help. And I think that starts with railings that cannot be climbed over.
Yeah, exactly.
That aren't chain link fences. Because when I was in San Francisco, parts of it are a little bit higher now.
Yeah.
Not all of it. And it's chain link.
And that's so easily.
As if you can't climb that.
Exactly.
It's pretty quick to climb. So I feel like it needs to be. A lot of bridges nowadays, though, I think do have higher railings, like really high railings, like 10-foot, 11-foot railings from what I've been able to see.
Wow.
Yeah.
I definitely have always wanted to go to San Francisco, and it's such an iconic spot, especially the bridge, to go visit. And now I'm just going to imagine the San Francisco Bridge as orange and yellow striped, because that's insane.
No, black and yellow.
Oh yeah, black and yellow, not orange and yellow. Orange and yellow kind of would have been a choice, I feel like. That kind of would have been fun. So, in keeping the conversation up with San Francisco and, unfortunately, suicides, I was super interested in doing some research about the forests in San Francisco, because I know that there is such an iconic forested area that is seen in quite a bit of movies. One that comes to mind is Planet of the Apes, the newer one.
Iconic.
I guess, iconic movie. So there's a huge forest in San Francisco. It's to the south of the Golden Gate Bridge, and it's called the Sutro Forest. It's a nature reserve in San Francisco, and it's home to thousands and thousands of eucalyptus trees that were planted like a really, really long time ago. And it was planted by Adolf Sutro over 100 years ago. It's an 80-acre forest of eucalyptus trees in the heart of San Francisco, is what this little blurb says. It's such a huge forest, you can kind of see it anywhere in San Francisco. But kind of the darker side of this forest is that over 100 years ago, this forest was home to numerous suicides, especially by men, and hanging themselves in the trees, because it was such a secluded area. It was kind of a place where not a lot of foot traffic. There was not a lot of people going in and out, and the people who were going in weren't necessarily coming back out.
Like, I guess there's not really trails that are very popular there.
I think it was more so, foot trails and game trails back then. And, nowadays, obviously, they're there's jogging trails and hiking trails
there are.
in San Francisco in the Sutro Forest. But back then, I think over 100 years ago, they were just foot trails more so.
Yeah, it's just crazy to think I was so close and I didn't even know that this giant eucalyptus forest was there.
Which is so cool.
Like a eucalyptus forest.
Yeah, we don't have eucalyptus trees in where we live.
Yeah.
I mean, I have eucalyptus plants in my bathroom, like dried ones.
Not quite the same.
Not quite the same, but it's just crazy to imagine. So yeah, this forest was such a secluded place. So the act of, going to the forest and taking your own life was a very private act, and it was without intervention. There was not a lot of people to stop them. It was mostly a lot of men struggling with mental health, probably addiction, all of that, those kind of things, more than 100 years ago, similar things that people struggle with now.
Sorry, all these like suicides you're talking about were like over 100 years ago is when the
bulk of them were happening.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Bodies that were, left in the forest went undiscovered for days and for months because of the lack of foot traffic. And they were so badly decomposed that you weren't able to identify the body. You could only really be ascertained by personal items like belongings, wallets, shoes, all that kind of stuff. So is a forest like this something that could be haunted because of all the lost souls is kind of where my brain goes, because I'm so interested in this, the connection between the forest and why it's a place where people feel the need to take their own life. It's such from the crazy everyday activity of someone's life going into this really, really calm forest and the comparatives between the two. It's almost like a place where souls, busy souls go to rest.
Yeah.
So that's, in connection to San Francisco, that's what I was interested in is the Sutro Forest. Now it's a busy place. There's a lot of hiking, a lot of sightseeing.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's not, I'm sure there are incidences where, someone will go to the forest to take their own life. It's not something that's uncommon. There's a lot of forests in the world where, people choose to do that. But back then it was such a secluded place where there wasn't a lot of foot traffic and people decided to, take their own lives there.
It's just crazy how it can go from something that is like, because I just think about the Japanese suicide forest, right? So
I don't know the name of the forest specifically, but yes, I do know the forest.
But it's still popular to this day. And I don't think many people really walk into that forest to go for a nice hike or a jog. So it's kind of crazy that a forest with a similar starting ground, I guess, would be able to transform into a tourist attraction or a daily jog. Yeah. Like personally, if I knew any of the forests around here were popular for that type of thing, I wouldn't feel comfortable going into them purely because I wouldn't feel comfortable discovering a body. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, something, I don't want to cut you off, that it made me remember was that the whole, when you said somebody finding the body, is this idea that these people are leaving their home to commit suicide because suffocation, firearms, and poison, those are really strong, really, I guess, most popular or common is maybe the right word, forms of suicide. Right. Those are probably all done in the home.
I feel like that's usually the case, is a place of comfort.
And I think I looked at a statistic that said 85% of all suicides are in the home. Yeah. But then in both our cases, these are people going outside the home. And I wonder how many of those cases have to do with not wanting their family members to see them. Yeah. And find them. And being alone, wholly alone. I mean, so I guess it's a little bit different with a bridge. You are in front of a lot of people doing the act, but in the water, I guess you're alone. But in the forest, I understand, it's deafening. I understand the seclusion. I'm so interested in hiking and backpacking and, going for walks in the forest. It's one of the main things that I enjoy doing in my spare time, on weekends and long weekends, is going hiking. And I love spending time in the woods for that reason, is that it's so quiet and you can really just... Peaceful.
It's peaceful and kind of come to terms with the stillness, and it's so beautiful. But I know that there are a lot of people who are afraid of that unknown. You know, some people enjoy it and some people are afraid of it. I'm interested in talking about the forests and the many aspects that make these forests creepy and unsettling. As someone personally who loves to spend their time hiking and camping, the feeling of being alone in the wilderness is truly unlike any other feeling. To some it's freeing, and to others it can be super unnerving, right? I'm sure if, you know, you were in the dark forest at night, you would kind of be pissing your pants a little bit. I would as well.
Well, I picture myself in this forest, and I picture myself just going for a jog, and I picture myself looking over my shoulder for 5 seconds, because, like, you can definitely feel presences.
Yeah, energies.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
They're very powerful places,
yes.
I think.
That's such a good way to describe it, is that forest is so powerful. I think humans naturally have an ingrained fear of environments like forests and jungles. It's, you know, does it stem from our ancient ancestors' fears of animals and prey and being hunted, right? Being vulnerable, being out in the open. I think for some people, especially those who are used to more of an urban setting, the forest is something that is alien and unfamiliar. You know, someone who lives in like a concrete jungle like Vancouver. There were a couple people at my work that I was talking to, and they had lived in Vancouver for a handful of years, but had never really ventured out into the forest and just kind of stayed around the city, which is crazy to think, because Vancouver is such a populated area when it comes to like the forest. Like, it's, you know, we have so many forests here. It's kind of insane that not stepping foot in one is something that has occurred. It's crazy. But forests do pose a lot of dangers and a lot of risks. Thick forests get really dark quickly. Like, it could be 2:00 and it could be dark under the brush. It's pretty spooky. Rocky and mountainous landscapes are super dangerous for many reasons. Landslide risks, slip and fall hazards, snow and freezing temperatures are some like hazards as well. But also forests, for many reasons, can trigger a sense of fear. The fear of forests, I looked it up, is called sylvophobia, which is super interesting.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't know that was a phobia that someone could have.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I didn't know it would be called a phobia.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's just as common as being scared of the dark.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
Because that's almost what it is often, is being scared of the dark.
Yeah.
But I know
the unknown.
The like podcast I really like to listen to, My Favorite Murder, one of its main little sayings is stay the fuck out of the forest.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, stay out of the forest. Like, that's where you get murdered.
Yeah.
Like, even just thinking about like the bear versus the man in the forest, thinking about being alone in the forest with a bear or man coming after you, like, that's not a unique feeling to have. Like, many people have experienced being alone in the forest and having somebody after them.
Yeah.
Or thinking.
Yes, exactly.
Coming after them.
I love the feeling of, it's almost like adrenaline inducing. That's why a lot of people do things. That's why people go skydiving or, you know, drive really fast, is that adrenaline. Don't drive fast, please. But like NASCAR drivers, the reason they do it is for the adrenaline. And the reason that I enjoy hiking, especially places that are a little bit more secluded and not as busy, densely populated, is because of the stillness and the quietness. But with that stillness and quietness comes a lot of risk, right?
I didn't know that was part of the reason you liked hiking. It's the adrenaline.
Yeah,
that's okay. Because when you were telling me about the hike that you did with your friend, you were telling me about the bear packs that you put in the trees,
bear bags and bear canisters. Correct. Yeah,
and I was like, that is like so sketchy.
Yeah,
that like you even need to be doing that, and like, holy moly, I don't know if I like I'm super down to do that.
Yeah. It's kind of a, what do they say? I don't know if it's type A or type B. I think it's type B fun is what people say.
Oh, is that what they say?
Yeah, I think the term, it might be wrong. It might be type A, but yeah, type B fun is like going out in the wilderness and staying overnight in a tarp and in a tent, with the fear or with the thought that maybe a bear could eat you, but you're still having so much fun. That's kind of where I get my enjoyment out of being in the forest. So, you know, my backpacking trip was really, really fun in the summer, but I just can't help my brain from going to thinking about the paranormal and the unexplained in the forest. That's just my favorite thing to think about, even though I'm in the forest and I'm like, could be in danger.
Because of course.
It's because, yeah, stay the fuck out of the forest. So there are many jobs as well that require people to work in forests. There's park rangers, there's forestry jobs, there's search and rescue. But a lot of these jobs deal with, obviously, really upsetting stories. Park rangers coming across people who've killed themselves in the forest, search and rescue cases of people getting lost or going missing and passing away, unfortunately, because of the elements. But one thing I'm interested in is the search and rescue stories of the paranormal experiences. Many can be explained, and many may very well be just wives' tales, like the Chupacabra or what else? The Wendigo, stories with run-ins of these creepy creatures and hearing things. It's fun to imagine forests being their own entities and having their own rules. So the paranormal stories from search and rescue people on Reddit's No Sleep are fun to think about being true. There's a post on Reddit, and it's, I'm a search and rescue officer, and these are the things that I've experienced. And it goes through a list of really creepy experiences that they've had. One of them that really stuck out to me was of a little girl who climbed up a tree to get a better view of the forest, but she never ended up coming back down, and there was no trace of her, like completely vanished. Her grandma and her mom never said that she came down, so she just climbed up, never came down, and they couldn't see her, they couldn't find her.
Yeah, that's a really horrible story, but in my mind, I just immediately went to Hold On Tight, Spidermonkey.
Oh no.
It did though, because I was like, what if she just jumped to another tree?
Oh, and she was jumping from tree to tree, and that doesn't scare you the hell out of you.
No, but Edward Cullen came and said, hold on tight, Spidermonkey.
Jesus. Sorry. It's so funny. That's such a crazy vision.
That's just what I was thinking.
There's stories of search and rescue canine dogs, which is really interesting, leading officers straight up cliff sides.
Yeah.
Like scents of people that have somehow traveled up cliff sides with no possible handholds. Like, why? How? Where could these people have gone? I mean, there's probably ways to explain the reasoning why the dogs are getting the scents all the way up the cliff sides. Like, maybe the wind direction changed and there's some sort of updraft. But I'd like to just imagine that, they just vanished. They met this cliffside and all of a sudden, poof, they're gone. Oh, it's so creepy to think about. Another one that just gives me goosebumps was a story written about the man with black eyes in the forest. A woman...
Okay, well, I just had
Get ready.
shivers up my spine.
Get ready. A woman was lost and she ended up being found with no backpack, no shoes, by search and rescue. And as they were walking back to, I'm assuming their kind of like their camp that they set up, because I'm pretty sure she was lost pretty far in the forest and it took a couple days to find her. So they usually set up camp, like base camp, where they can kind of get their bearings. I was there walking back to base camp. The woman kept looking back behind the crew and her, saying to the officers that a big man with black eyes was following them.
Nope.
The woman apparently was agitated, saying that the man was making faces at them, and that she had to tell the man that she wasn't going to go with him. Yeah. Creepy, huh? And then everyone started hearing sounds around them, apparently. Coughing, but more rhythmic and deeper. Insect-like, apparently, was the sound that they were hearing, which is horrible. Coughing, but rhythmic.
Insect-like coughing.
But deeper. I'm not even going to replicate that.
I think you should try.
No.
I think you should.
Back at base camp, the woman said to one of the officers, she's talking about the man with the black eye, he says to tell you to speed up. He doesn't like looking at the scar on your neck. The officer ended up having a scar on his neck that is hidden by his coat and only he knew about, which is terrifying.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah, so crazy, huh? I'd like to think if I wasn't doing the job that I'm doing now, in another life, I would be a search and rescue officer, because I think, obviously, I wouldn't have stories like this because, it is from a No Sleep Reddit forum. So these may well be, made up.
It's no fun to think about.
It's no fun to think about that they're made up. I love to think that they're real. But just being able to help people, obviously being stuck in the forest and being in these really scary situations, especially kids, would be something that would be really fulfilling, I think, for me. You know, same reason that people decide to be firefighters or paramedics is that they want to help people. But sometimes the search and rescue officers and park rangers have really creepy stories. And one story that I do want to get into, but I think I'm going to save it for another episode, is talking about the staircases in the forest. Kat knows about the staircases in the forest.
It's petrifying. We don't talk about them.
We don't talk about the staircases. We don't go looking for the staircases in the forest.
We ignore them if we see them.
We ignore them if we see them, and we also, biggest rule, don't go up them.
Oh, big no.
Yeah, we don't go up the staircases. That will be a conversation that we can have in further episodes about more creepy stuff in the forest. But I guess I have some questions, ending it out is the forest itself an entity? And is it trying to draw people in, do you think?
I mean, I think that there's obviously, I believe in that there's the conservation of mass is the belief, I guess. The belief that when somebody, passes, that their, energy continues on.
Right.
And I think that, we've had a lot of years, and there's been a lot of years that have gone by where people have lived in the forest.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't we think that some of those energies would get a little stuck?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then not to mention that there's just so many things that are unexplained in the forest.
Yeah. I think that's my favorite part.
You don't even need, the creepypastas, of course. You can have those crazy stories and stuff, but they are, I think, sometimes based on truths, even if you think about the, that documentary on the kids that went missing. Oh, the
missing 411. Yeah, the forests. And
just completely unexplained.
Yeah.
And it's not, uncommon for people to go just missing.
No.
And just never to be found.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just guess I don't believe necessarily that they're all by,
explainable sources, explainable modes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, they're all cases of the fact that they just fell and they're covered in brush.
Yeah.
And for some reason canines can't find them. I just don't think that's all of the cases.
Yeah.
I
agree. So do you think that the forest then is inherently bad or evil?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I don't think so. Because I have been in forests where I feel so safe.
Mm-hmm.
Just automatically, it's maybe you feel a little bit watched, but more like a hug.
It's more of someone's watching over you and not watching you.
But I've definitely been in the forest where I just feel this strange need to keep looking over. The forest behind my house, I never feel okay in it.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. It doesn't matter if I'm with Brandon, a decently big guy who's obviously very comfortable in the forest. I never feel safe in that forest. I always feel like somebody's right behind me.
There's an energy.
Yeah. But in Burt Flynn, I never feel like that.
Yeah. So I think forests aren't necessarily inherently evil, and there's nothing necessarily about the forest that is trying to hurt you. I just think the forest has its own agendas, and the forest is going to grow. It's going to die. It's going to, move the way that it needs to. It doesn't really care about you. It's going to do its own thing, right? That's kind of what the basics of hiking and the basics of backpacking is that the weather and the temperature and the forest doesn't really give a fuck about you. Mm-hmm. It is just doing its own thing, and you have to adapt to it.
Well, it's just kind of like the ocean.
Exactly.
It's respect the ocean because it's a very powerful being.
Yeah.
It can turn really quickly, and I think it's the same thing for any big, I guess, natural location.
Yeah. And then I guess my last question, you've sort of answered it, is what do we think the forest does to the people that go missing? Which is a crazy thing to think about because my brain, my Marvel-loving brain goes to there's a lot of different universes. I think people can slip into the upside down or something, and that's why people go missing without a trace, and all that's left is a shoe, right? So I think there are a lot of things at play out in the forest that we don't know and we can't really explain.
Oh, okay. It's interesting that you think that it would be maybe more of a disappearance.
Paranormal.
Yeah.
Or not paranormal, like extraterrestrial kind of.
Well, extraterrestrial would be like an alien.
Yeah, maybe not aliens.
But like, I guess I like do have that slight wondering of like, I don't even know, like maybe even just like things that live in the forest that we just don't know are there.
Creatures and beings and... Yeah, exactly.
Because like, I guess I just have the humble thought process, just like the ocean, that if things are just as intelligent as us, right?
Yeah.
Like if we just assume that there are other beings out there that are just as intelligent as us, maybe like, I don't even know, mermaids.
Yeah.
And their world and their domain is the ocean. Why would we think that we'd see them if they didn't want us to?
Yeah, so it's the same with the things in the forest.
Yeah, like if there's things in the forest or people in the forest, why the hell would we know? Like, why are we smarter? Why are we better at hunting? If that's their domain, and all we do is cut down their domain and then make it concrete jungle. I mean, obviously, that's not all we do. Like, there's people who love the forest and go in there. But I don't know. I just think it's a little bit, I don't know, ignorant to think we know everything.
Exactly. That's why this stuff is so interesting. And my brain feels so excited and so happy when I go into the forest because there's so much that I can't explain, and that's okay. You know, I think everyday life you have to explain, you know, there's reasoning for everything. But once you're in the forest, it's kind of just, you can't really explain a lot of the stuff that goes on, and it's so peaceful.
But be safe in the forest.
Be safe in the forest.
And know to bring the 10 essentials?
The 10 essentials. Bear spray, bring it all.
And know the temperatures.
Exactly.
And have all the necessary safety things. And maybe even just have a buddy who knows what the hell they're doing.
Tell
like
someone.
You do.
Yeah. Tell someone that you're going hiking or where you're going before you go.
Yeah. Yeah. And what your, I guess, plans are.
Yeah.
Your itinerary for your trek.
So that you don't end up like one of those missing people that went up the trees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, let's maybe not climb trees. Or if you do, stay within sight.
Yes.
Don't climb trees to a point that you can't be seen.
Exactly.
And if you do, then have somebody climb it with you.
No.
Maybe like a staggered effect. So like you climb up, and then once I can't see you, I'll start climbing up. Then I can see you, but then somebody's on the ground so they can see me. So everybody can always be seen. But we can still climb, you know? We just have to work within the boundaries.
Yeah, exactly. Or bring an air tag or something with you. Anyways, that was our talk about the Golden Gate Bridge and the forests. This was really awesome for a first podcast. I'm so excited for all of the other topics that we have planned out to talk about. I think they're definitely things we're super giddy about, and I'm looking forward to that.
And if there's anything that, I don't know, maybe you've listened to this point and you're like, oh, I really want to learn more about X or Y, just let us know.
Yeah.
Just message us and let us know, and maybe we'll end up looking into it, and then you don't have to. And
exactly.
We can just do it all and just
tell you. Wouldn't you like to know?
Yeah, wouldn't you like to know?
I would.
I would.